And I'll share my screen. Excellent. Can everyone see that? Great. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So welcome members and guests of the RTA. Today we have 270 plus registrations from 20 plus countries represented on the line. We have strong interest from the buyer base in financial services, energy, government and from investors. So thank you for coming and supporting us. Deborah sends her apologies, but she's speaking at an international conference right now, advocating for RegTech and to a global audience, which we're excited about as well. RegTechEdgeNoBorders is our leading edge program, and it showcases specific RegTech solutions aligned with our RegTech taxonomy. And in this case, the event we're focusing on is AML, CTF and sanction screening. We've had more than 2,000 people attend these RegTech Edge showcase programs since 2019, and audience have been from more than 45 countries. We've also recently added an investor edition to the series as well to create closer connections between RegTechs and investors. So there's no doubt that financial crime is a popular area of interest, given the record regulatory fines and the growing complexity in being compliant and all the costs associated with that. Put simply, RegTech can help organisations mitigate the risks, and today we will hear from 6 such RegTech Association members who will showcase the problem that they are solving. Some housekeeping. So if we could all be on mute, please, and cameras off if you aren't presenting. Q&A is going to be done via the chat function, so we encourage you to ask questions of our RegTechs, and our moderators will moderate those questions. A recording of this event will also be available on our YouTube channel sometime in the near future. So on that note, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our moderators for today, Dima Katchalov and Nick Davison from EY. They will set the scene for us before they introduce our RegTechs and moderate the Q&A for each RegTech. Dima leads EY's financial crime and fraud technology practice in Oceania, and prior to joining EY, he led ANZ's fraud, financial crime and credit risk technology division. Nick is a financial crime consulting partner based in Sydney, and he joined EY in May 2021. In his prior role, he was based in Singapore and led financial crime consulting for another Big Four consulting firm. So I will hand over to them now, and they are going to be tasked with keeping our RegTechs on time. They have 5 minutes each, and they will keep them to that strict time limit so that we can make sure the first RegTech has as much time as the last. If we don't get to all of the Q&As, don't worry, we can certainly reach out afterwards, or we can stay online for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes afterwards if that works well for you. So I will hand over now to the EY gentleman.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you very much. And thank you, Deborah, even though she's not here. It's a shame, and look, it's great to be attending another RegTech AML and compliance event. EY really enjoyed being part of a similar event in August last year, so thank you for having us back. What we wanted to do is Nick and I wanted to give you a quick introduction to the topic, and I guess to set the scene as to what does AML, sanctions and CTF compliance look like in 2020. We will throw over to our panel after a couple of minutes, and Nick has kindly agreed to moderate the questions from yourselves to our panel, and I have the unenviable task of keeping time. Now, in order to stick to that 5-minute limit that Alice mentioned, there will be, with 30 seconds to go, there will be a Vuvuzela sound that will be played, and this is what it sounds like in case you have forgotten. I think most of you would agree it's not the most pleasant sound effect in the world, so let's please try and make sure we stay on time to avoid me having to put that into action. So setting the scene, what does compliance look like in 2020 and 2021? So next page, please, Alison. So the global cost of compliance continues to grow, and this past year in 2020, they have exceeded $200 billion US for the very first time. And what's really important is it's not so much the raw number of compliance costs, it's the growth from the previous year, and that growth has been close to 20%, and it's sort of sustained that 15 to 20% growth year on year. So what we're seeing globally around the world is we're seeing across pretty much every single region, and Alison, if you could flick onto the next page, please. Every single region is experiencing double-digit reported growths in compliance costs. And these compliance costs, they comprise of labor costs. So these are the people, the analytics teams, operations teams, the governance teams that are required to maintain financial institutions compliance. And there are also technology costs as well. So these are the costs of running the technology platforms, the teams, the data, etc., required to maintain compliance by financial institutions. And you can see there's really significant growth there. And what's really interesting in 2020 is that for the first time in the last probably 5 to 7 years, labor costs have started to become a greater portion of compliance costs. So what that means is technology costs as a percentage of overall compliance costs have stayed flat or even decreased in some areas. But labor costs, so these are people that are required to work the alerts, to tune the systems, to do first, second, third line risk, etc. Those labor costs as a percentage of overall compliance costs have continued to go up. As an example, for example, in Asia Pacific, those labor costs have gone from 54% to 58% in 2020. In Latin America, they've gone from 42% to 54%. North America, 53 to 59. So what's driving that shift? And we have a look at the rest of our environment, the rest of our world, and technology is starting to become a bigger part of our lives. Generally, the expenditure on technology continues to increase, but in the compliance space seems to be bucking that trend. And a lot of that is being driven by the fact that the technology systems and capabilities of financial institutions that are deployed for compliance, they simply can't keep pace with the rapidly changing global regulatory landscape, as well as the screening complexity and the regulatory complexity that those systems have to adapt to. So what do organizations do? They throw people at the problem, and that's why you're starting to see those labor costs continuing to go up, and that's why you're starting to see compliance costs go up as well. So next page, please, Alison. On the flip side of that, however, there is hope. So we look at the fintech industry, and our panelists today, while some of them have been established companies for a number of years, they are still emerging in their respective fields. The good news is that the global fintech and regtech industry is continuing to grow at a significant pace. So the global fintech market will be worth over $300 billion in the next 3 years, and that's also growing at a rate of 20% a year on average for the last 10 years. And Alison, if you can please click onto the next page. On the local scale and on the local scene, we're starting to see the Australian fintech industry and fintech market really start to thrive and really start to grow. And 2020 has been a fantastic year because it marked the first year where the number of Australian fintechs that are in operation has surpassed 700, so 700 companies. We're also cracked $1 billion in Australian fintech investment in the last quarter of 2020, despite the pandemic. And we're also starting to see the revenue share generated by fintechs is continuing to contribute more and more to our GDP. And it's estimated that last year, fintechs in Australia have generated around $1 billion in genuine new economic activities. That's new revenue streams, new jobs, new opportunities. And it's really interesting, whilst blockchain and cryptocurrencies are sort of on everyone's lips, it's really interesting to see how that trend plays itself out in the blockchain startups, which have grown by 150% in the last year as well. So whilst we're starting to see the global burden of compliance from a financial point of view continue to increase, the growth in our fintech industry, both globally and then at a local level is also growing as well. And you'll hear from 6 companies today who will be able to showcase their solution. And just before I throw over to our first panelist, DX Compliance, on the next page, please. Final page, Alison. So as we kind of look ahead and we sort of see how do you bring together the various players in the industry. So from the technology companies at the cutting edge of compliance innovation, such as the ones you'll hear from today, and how do we connect them to our ultimate clients and to the ecosystem of financial services in Australia and across the region, many of whom are represented here today. The key to that is collaboration and partnerships, and those collaboration and partnerships would happen through associations such as the RegTech Association and their fantastic support for the industry. It'll happen through government bodies and regulators, AUSTRAC in particular, and of course it'll happen with the assistance of industry integrators and firms such as EY. So with that, I'm right on time, and I will hand over to DX Compliance for their presentation. Thank you, and take it away.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you RegTech team, RegTech Australia, and for the invitation, and EY team to actually really draw down the numbers associated, and part of the reason we are in the business because of that. So my name is Prem Ipe. I'm the Chief Product Officer for DX Compliance. DX Compliance is anti-money laundering and compliance monitoring software. Originally headquarters of Dublin. We started in 2018, and since then we started in London, Abu Dhabi, and now we are coming to Australia. So want to introduce the product to us. To you guys. Yeah, next slide, Alison. Thanks. So the product derives from the pain point from our co-founders who are both lawyers, and our CEO Simon, who was the first MLRO for the first fintech bank out of Germany. And we worked in crypto, a lot of high frequency, high risk payments. So it is designed from a business pain point, what the regulators want to see. And from there, the tech follows it. So that keeps us separate from a lot of the tech products in the market. We are a fully SaaS model. And also we really focus post KYC process, from where everything post KYC, ongoing monitoring, risk management, the human behavior side of things, to look at financial and non-financial data to really help organization to see where is the real risk coming from. Because let's face it, most of businesses, most of your customer base are good, but really where is your real pain point, which is causing you the 80% of the problems. We support, our data model is actually very flexible. So in that way, even though we started working from a banking and transaction-based model, we now expanded to FX, ecosystems, crypto, trading space, asset management, and also fintech. So really, we have a model that actually drives every single data point that is relevant to really drive the entire AML compliance process more efficiently. Next slide, please. Thanks, Alison. I don't want to say too much about it because everybody knows about this. The idea is, I want to highlight is now no one is safe, right? So we right now also expanded to UAE, and we see that in the regulators are getting really on top of things, that even gold brokers who really are not, moving big money, not having governance on their customers and money movement, everybody is getting fined. So the whole thinking behind the fact that just big banks are getting fined has no longer gone, because the rise of fintech, rise of digital payments, everyone who is moving money has an inherent responsibility to make sure that your systems or your business is not really misused by bad actors. Let's go to the next slide, please. And part of the big challenge is from a ground-up design issue where traditional tools are really inflexible and limited in scope. Part of the other reason is also if you're a head of marketing and you ask for the data for your organization to really build products, you pretty much get all the data in the world. And I can say that because I used to be head of analytics in my previous roles. But if you're head of AML or compliance, in a way, culturally, you look at suspiciously, like, why do you need the data? Do you need to shut down customers? So plus that, plus the traditional transaction way of looking at it, where it's very narrow, the starting point of a lot of business are very wrong. So they have very limited push to start with. And like the EY team just said, when you have an event that drives the business, that increases the customer base, as an example, in our previous role, we had crypto in 2018 spiked up 15,000 in 2018. We had more account openings a day than in a month. So the biggest problem they solved was like add 50 people because to do compliance problems, because all the transaction was just creating cases and nobody could manage it. So there's
Prem, I think we had the buzzer. So
oh, sorry. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
No, I think any last comments before we move on to Fenergo?
Yeah, so just want to say, so we really focus on multiple use cases around FX, asset, and payment cards processor. That's the information around it. And the last slide I just want to cover is just last slide. So we do real-time monitoring, behavior analytics, full SAR automation, audit trail, completely API native. We have a completely proprietary model around 200 plus data points, and a fully driven case management system. So it's fully business-driven product.
Great, thank you. Thank you. It is a bit like speed dating here today, so let's keep.
Yeah, sure.
So Fenergo, I think you're up next.
Yeah, great. Hello, I'm just waiting, Alison, if you want to. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Owen Keating. Thank you very much to RegTech Association and for EY today and everybody joining in the session. Hopefully we get to meet you someday in person soon. Today I'd like to tell you about Fenergo, our client lifecycle management solution, why we exist, who we work with, and the types of solutions we offer. First of all, what is client lifecycle management solution? So I guess from our perspective, it's a single platform for financial institutions to manage everything from a regulatory perspective, such as remote account opening, onboarding, origination, prevention of financial crime, staying compliant, becoming a central data master from a journey process perspective, and offering digital self-service. Next slide, please. So before I talk anymore, really a little bit about why we exist. So the first part is really about protecting the organization, and how we do that is policy standardization and consistency and enforcement across the organization. We do that using our regulatory rules, which are built by our community at Fenergo's cost. And as mentioned earlier, what this does is reduce the cost of labor, reduces the cost of technologies, and reduces the cost of staying compliant, and make sure the organization is safe. The other principle is around the commerciality. So how do we make it seamless? How do we make the user experience excellent? How do we offer it in a headless, omni-channel presence? And how do we accelerate that time to yes and that time to revenue for organizations? Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Alison. Thank you. So this is an example of the actual platform. And if you think about it, of any client type, so it could be a big institutional bank or retail bank or superannuation or asset management, any product type, so it could be anything like a home loan or whatever it may be, or any event such as remediation or refresh. Fenergo manages all those events and products and clients on the platform. So we digitize and automate the journeys. We offer it in an omni-channel solution, so you can access it in the Fenergo UI, in a client portal, and a mobile app, through a CRM. We come with over 100 jurisdictions all around the world, so tax, OTC derivative, KYC, AML out of the box. We integrate in with multiple data providers, KYC and AML, and we offer it in a cloud-based API, fully, truly integrated into your existing ecosystem. Next slide, please. So we follow the principles of FATF, so looking at the likes of identification and verification, the confirming the ownership and the structure, understanding the nature of the purpose, and doing ongoing monitoring and perpetual KYC. So we follow those principles all across the entire platform. Next slide, please. And what comes out of the box in the actual platform is all of the AML, KYC, tax, OTC derivative form, data and investor protection for any jurisdiction around the world. So whether that be Australia or any other organization, is all built into the rules in the engine. Next slide, please. This is an example of how that works in the journey in the platform. So if you think about it from a new customer onboarding, so we do the identification and verification biometrically, say in a bank, a new customer coming on board. Then we reach out based on our rules, correct the right documentation for the client that's being onboarded. We do all the AML screening and integrate in with all those screening providers. We then centralize and manage that data on the one platform. We then orchestrate, and depending on what the requirements are of that client or product or event, we manage and do the origination of the offering and manage all the account opening, etc. If there's any documents missing, we manage the outreach, and then we move away from a time-based review to more of a perpetual event-based KYC to keep you safe. Next slide, please. So a little bit about Fenergo. We've been around for just over 12 years. We're doing well. We've just reached unicorn status. We have 850 staff globally, 15 offices, including Sydney and Melbourne here locally. We have 100 clients now live on the platform, and we are ranked #1 for KYC and AML. Next slide, please. And this is just an example of our status and recognition for KYC and CLM globally. Next slide, please. So lastly, with about 30 seconds to go, I believe I've just got an example of our clients around the world. We work with the big 4 banks in Australia, including Macquarie and Barrenjoey. We provide client process master across various different organizations. And what I mean by that is any client type or any product type or any event is managed and run and centralized as a golden source in the Fenergo platform. The statistics in the center there are an example of the type of benefits that we bring with reduction of onboarding, reductions of cost of labor and technology, and the ROI that can be given. I think I'm right on time. I'd love to have questions from anybody at the end of this. We'd love to organize a demonstration or talk to you any more about Fenergo. Thank you.
Impeccable timing. Thank you, Ian.
Owen, no problem.
Owen.
Yeah, thank you very much, and you're right on time. And there are no questions in the chat now, so I think we keep going. And as questions come through, or as we have time at the end, let's go through some questions and Q&A with the panel.
Thank you.
So handing over to Handshakes.
Thank you. So very quickly, next slide, please. So Handshakes is a company founded in 2011. I'm Satwinder. I'm the director of Handshakes. We are based in Adelaide, Australia at the moment. So we are a data tech company owned by Nikkei and Singapore Press Holdings with presence over 10 cities, and we are growing. Next slide, please. So what we do is that what we understand is that Asia's corporate landscape can be very difficult to understand. And how we try to resolve this is by providing reliable insights on Asian companies and people and how they are related to one another. Next slide, please. So at Handshakes, we provide both data solutions and technology solutions. Next slide. The Handshake app is a unique solution which combines both our data and technology. It enables our clients to visualize cross-border connections instantly. Next slide, please. At Handshakes, we provide real-time access to complete, reliable, and updated corporate registry data and capital markets data. The regions we cover for corporate registry data are Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, and China, and soon to add India and Thailand. For capital markets, we have access to Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong, and soon we'll be adding India. The sources of our data are directly from the regulators and the exchanges. Next slide, please. We also provide access to regulatory actions obtained from over 100 sources globally. Next slide, please. Our data coverage also includes Asia's best corporate news sources, such as the financial news from the Nikkei and the Financial Times, amongst others. Next slide, please. Our clients can obtain access to all data via our APIs with Handshakes for the purpose of due diligence, investigation, as well as identifying supply chains. Next slide, please. We not only provide clients access to our data, but we have the technology to improve your quality of insights by fusing your private data with our public data. Next slide, please. And finally, Handshakes here is our natural language processing tool, which assists with automation of data extraction and document review. Next slide, please. We have a growing number of clients, especially amongst regulators, enforcement agencies, and financial institutions. Next slide, please. We also have a growing number of partners across the globe, so it includes the likes of Accra, Hong Kong Exchange, Singapore Exchange, and so on. Next slide, please. Thank you. And you can contact me below if you have any questions or if you want a more detailed presentation about Handshakes. I think I took 3 minutes. That was pretty fast.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks so much. And I'm looking for questions in the chat. Please don't be shy, everybody. As we have time, we will ask. Oh,
sorry, I see a question for Handshakes.
There's one coming up.
Okay, so yeah, for Handshakes, given that there are a lot of data, how do you ensure only relevant and accurate information is made available to your clients? So our data is directly from the source. So as I mentioned that we have access to the complete data sets directly from the source, right? So that's what I mean by that's how we ensure accuracy of our data, right? In terms of yeah, so that all data is accessed directly from the source and it's updated on a real-time basis. For example, when you talk about China, we have access to close to 80 to 90 million companies registry in China. Hope that helps.
For China, what are the typical issues that you have with the data there? How extensive is your coverage and where are the kind of challenges with that? Yeah,
so for China, we get our data directly from the registry, which is social credit, right? So it is close to 80 to 90 million companies. The main problem with China registry data is the language, where most of it is, well, all of it is in the Chinese language. But what we have done is that we have actually successfully translated that to English. So with our platform now, you can get it both in Chinese characters and English as well. And as I said, we don't just cover 10 to 20,000 Chinese registry companies. We got 80 to 90 million active companies alone from China.
Fantastic. And I think that's good timing, perfectly, very succinct answers and presentation. But good timing to hand over to Know Your Customer, and Klaus.
Thank you. Right. My name is Klaus Christensen, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Know Your Customer. Alison, next slide, please. Here's the challenge. Corporate KYC and onboarding is far behind consumer onboarding. The traditional manual and paper-based approach is too slow, too risky, and it's unscalable. Worse, current tech-based solutions fall short in typical in-house digitization efforts, as we often know, just try to replicate a paper process as PDFs. Next, please. So at Know Your Customer, we partner with regulated organizations to radically simplify, improve, and digitize their KYC and AML compliance process for corporate customers. Next, please. Our technology empowers financial institutions to transform all the 5 key pillars of corporate KYC and client onboarding through one integrated suite of products. Let's look at these in turn. Next, please. So document collection is one of the worst in terms of efforts for the customer and for the compliance team. We remove the need to even ask the client for these documents and data. Our platform connects to company registries globally to source the documents, and it does so live the second you need it, you onboard someone. Next, please. The system then also automatically converts these documents that we source through the use of natural language processing, machine learning, and other algorithms into trusted structural information in real time, just then. Next, please. And a sophisticated case management and workflow tool wraps around all that, and it allows compliance teams to stay organized in the face of regulatory changes and high workloads. Next, please. So it's very difficult to request the same documents and information from customers for ongoing monitoring again and again, but regulations make you do that. With our system, that challenge goes away almost completely. Ask me later how we do that. Next, please. And reporting. High-level overviews or the drill down into team performance, risks, and opportunities. But even more important, having all that compliance process data available at your fingertips means you're audit ready at all times. Next, please. All right. What does this mean? What does the system mean for our clients really? Well, it's faster, way faster. It enables a full digital transformation where previously unscalable processes were. And it does that without compromising on compliance. Next, please. So you've heard from other vendors about KYC today. Well, we are KYC. But jokes aside, how are we different from these 4 traditional categories in our area? Company registry document services. They are good to have, but they do not go far enough. Staff still needs to process these documents manually, not scalable, and just doesn't solve enough of your problem. Corporate entity databases. They often contain outdated, stale information, just not precise enough for compliance, and certainly not for our regulators. Workflow tools. They do help with following the process, absolutely, but you're still left with all the manual work, just well organized manual work. And then there's all the individual ID verification apps. We love them. We integrate them for beneficial owners. On their own, they don't even scratch the surface for corporate onboarding. So next, please. And a quick one about why you should have listened to me in the first place here. KYC has been around since 2015. We have multiple offices in APAC and Europe and hope to set up in Australia next. Among our many customers are a top 5 Hong Kong bank and some smaller ones, Asia's largest corporate services agent, and one of the top 3 global credit card companies. Next, please. And just the last slide, please, Alison. Thanks. 5 minutes, quick one. Thank you for your time. Please do connect with me. The coordinates are on the screen there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience? We have time for a couple if anybody has anything they would like to ask Know Your Customer. And if you don't, I'll ask a quick one about implementation. I'm kind of interested as to how long it typically takes clients to implement your solution. What's your experience there?
Well, we are a cloud-based solution, so we literally run a script to start a new solution for a new customer, and it's done in minutes. We do provide excellent training. So usually it would be a couple of weeks if there is not a special implementation, a development job involved, which we also do.
Great. And we still have a minute or two if anybody has anything.
Very cool.
Everybody's doing such a good job. Everyone's doing such a good job being succinct and to the point. So we are now definitely on time. And then, because what about the registries you use? If there are jurisdictions where that's either challenging to get access or they don't have the same information, do you have kind of workarounds, or how would you help clients with those challenges?
Yes, that is a challenge. You're absolutely right. Not all registries in the world follow the FATF and have enough information available yet. That is something that is still ongoing, but it's changing. Even laggards like for BVI or so are coming on stream now. Independent of that, we have a very good coverage both in APAC and in Europe already. For the ones that we don't, we actually have customers, for example, in Caymans themselves, which is famously opaque as a registry. because our outreach tools to the customers that we integrated in the product are so good and so easy to use that you actually can use the product without any of the registry connections and still have a very superior workflow for your team and for your customers.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't know if you saw, and you still have a couple of minutes there, but Lorraine has a great question here, and should direct it to all the panels, so maybe people can address it in their discussion. But how much is AI and machine learning driving your product and its roadmap going forward?
Yeah, it's an interesting development. When we started, we didn't actually think it would be so much of a focus because it seemed like a challenge that could easily be solved with normal algorithms. You go somewhere, you down information, you combine it. That's regular stuff. But we found that with the information that is filed in registry, it's not as precise as we all would want them to. Like the way just the country of the jurisdiction of a beneficial owner is filed, it might be more natural language. They might write USA, they might write US F of A, they might write America or whatever. It's not filed precisely and with codes, and that all has to be translated. And we found ourselves to, over the history of our company, to use more and more AI for this kind of jobs. And especially with the data extraction from very complex filing documents, without AI, with just plain algorithms, you just run against the wall and you can't go further at some point. We had a complete breakthrough when we used AI that could push up the extraction rates from about 70% in a very difficult jurisdiction to 99.5% for a very difficult document. So we use AI a lot by now, and it is what our customers love about the product because it makes the data so clean and so immediately usable that we provide.
Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting. I can see Fenergo also using AI there as well. So
yeah,
we can maybe direct that to the group at the end if we have some time. But I think now we're bang on time to move to member check.
Great. Thanks, Nick, for the introduction. My name is Sean Thomas. I'm the head of business development. And today I'm going to be talking to you about member check, which is our online AML, CTF, and KYC service. Next slide, please. So member check is not new to the RegTech space and was established in 2007 to assist reporting entities comply with their AML, CTF, and KYC obligations. For the past 14 years, we've placed significant importance on compliance, technology, and security, and have placed that at the forefront of our development. And we can proudly say that we are ISO 27001, GDPR, and APRA compliant. Since the inception of the 2006 AML Act, we've seen new obligations and responsibilities being placed on reporting entities by regulatory bodies around the world. What we do is we work with ACAMS certified professionals all around the world to address the challenges and changes in these regulations and adapt our technology to ensure continued compliance for customers. Next slide, please. With regards to our services, MemberCheck offers global PEP and sanction checks, and through our technology, you'll be able to identify if any of your clients or members are politically exposed or if they are listed as a sanctioned individual or entity. We also have an adverse media check solution, which outputs any negative media information related to that particular individual or entity. Our global ID verification service allows you to verify the name, date of birth, and address of your clients and perform a biometric scan where we do a liveness detection test and a facial recognition test to ensure that a person is who they say they are. We also have an enhanced due diligence service, which provides you with a 34-page report of all the information that is publicly available for a particular person or entity. Our Aml Consulting service allows us to put you in touch with experienced AML professionals from all over the world who will be able to assist you in conducting risk assessments, as well as drafting up an AML program. Lastly, we have a business verification service, which allows you to identify who the ultimate beneficial owner of a particular organization is, and then perform PEP and sanction checks on them to ensure you understand the risk of doing business with that particular organization. Next slide, please. So some quick stats on our solution. We have had over 60 million scans performed through MemberCheck since our inception. We currently have over 10,000 customers worldwide, and our database covers over 195 countries. On that note, we update our database every 24 hours to ensure that it is as accurate and as up-to-date as can be. Next slide, please. So to run through some of our features, MemberCheck offers real-time risk monitoring through our automated ongoing monitoring service. This feature will allow you to add an individual or entity to a monitoring list, which is then screened daily against any changes to the database. If any update is found, you'll be notified via email or API to log back into your system and redo your due diligence. Our intuitive user interface makes compliance with your AML obligations a lot simpler and guarantees to provide you a very enjoyable user experience. We also have APIs should you wish to streamline your onboarding process. The last two features which I'd like to touch on include the sophisticated due diligence workflows, which allows you to allocate a decision and a risk to a particular individual entity based on the information that you've received. And once you've conducted your due diligence, you can then download PDF reports to prove to your auditors that you have performed the necessary checks, as well as have conducted the appropriate due diligence. Next slide, please. So the industries that we typically serve include financial services, superannuations, money remitters, accountants, and a lot more. Some of our more notable clients include the likes of Mercer, KPMG, Motorola, and the Cooperative Bank. Next slide, please. So I hope you're able to learn a bit about our MemberCheck solution and what we have to offer. We have QR codes available on this slide, so you can scan that to find out more about our solution. I've also listed my email address as well as our organization's email address should you wish to arrange for a demonstration. We'd love to hear from you. You can also find us at the ACAMS conference in Sydney next week. It's at the Shangri-La Hotel on Monday and Tuesday. So if you're based in Sydney and have the chance to come along, please come along and come say hi. Again, a big thanks to the RegTech Association and EY for facilitating this webinar. And if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you. So any specific questions coming through? I've got one here. What is included in EDD?
Yeah, look, the EDD is similar in a sense to the PEP and sanction reports. It does cover a lot of information as to whether that individual or entity is sanctioned, politically exposed. It goes through the financial information, checks to see the risk of them being associated with money laundering. It identifies if they're beneficial owners of a particular organization. And then a lot more information like compromised email addresses that they have associated to them. So really all public information that we can find, their relatives and close associates as well, any organizations that they're part of, all of that information is included in that report.
Great, thank you. And maybe just very, very quickly, what about false matches? And how does your tool deal with false matches?
Absolutely, I think that's a very important question. One of the biggest challenges that compliance officers face is dealing with the false positives. And as I said, MemberCheck has been around since 2007. Since then, we focused quite significantly on analyzing the data which sits behind our technology. And we've developed intelligent filters to help reduce the number of false positives. Some of those filters include match rates, whitelist policies, residence policies, PEP jurisdictions, and such. The application can also search against original script names, such as Arabic, Hebrew, or Chinese names. So, that allows you to accommodate for clients who have names with different characters that could potentially, output a lot of false matches. So as mentioned earlier, if you'd like to see those filters in action, we'd love to hear from you and we can show you them.
Great, thank you. And again, bang on time, so really appreciate that. So the final panelist now, we have Sedicii. Can you take over?
Absolutely. Hi, thanks for having us today. Dave Cunningham is my name, Chief Commercial Officer at Sedicii. So Sedicii, we focus on delivering certainty in a simplified manner. We provide identity and security solutions such as digital onboarding, quite similar to Fenergo and KYC. But today we're talking to you mainly about our solutions to prevent financial crime and really enable business to happen. Next slide, please, Alison. There's about 20 of us at the moment at Sedicii, but we're just closing our latest fundraising round, and we're going to move to about 80 this year, which is pretty good. So hope to open our first office in Australia. We have investment already from the Irish government and In-Q-Tel, the investment arm of the CIA, and really a group of people who are really focused on delivering cutting-edge solutions in the privacy-preserving technology space. Next slide, please. So while we do digital onboarding and we deliver that to organizations such as CaixaBank, the biggest lender in Spain, today we're talking to you about our privacy preserving AML solution called Prexa. Prexa, we brought it through the digital sandbox at the FCA, collaborated with a number of large institutions there. And what we're really looking to do is help us move the needle on the fact that we're only detecting 1% of financial crime, and it really isn't good enough for all our efforts. So what we have with Prexa is a solution which allows financial institutions to share insights and knowledge about a transaction without disclosing or moving the underlying data in any way, shape, or form. So it uses secure multi-party computation and zero knowledge proof to enable data to stay where it is in each organization, but for those insights to be shared between organizations to prevent financial crime. So this stops what usually happens, which is banks have very good transaction monitoring systems. It creates a suspicious alert, but then what happens is an antiquated system where a SAR is filed, there's a lot of false positives, false negatives, MLROs have to get on the phone to each other and talk in code about a potential transaction, and essentially just delays everything, and nothing really happens to make a big dent in criminals moving money. But here's where our technology comes in. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So what we do is we deliver a really simple solution, which involves no big integrations, no pooling of data, no sharing of data or anything like that. All we do is deploy an SDK at each bank or organization, or it also works with one bank in multiple jurisdictions. And the only thing we have to do among those collaborating is agree what questions we ask of each other, and we assign a risk score to it. It's as simple as that. So we could have all the banks in Australia collaborating just on authorized push payment fraud prevention, just by taking the payment instruction data, as we see in the first 6 questions here. We could have that done by the end of the week if they wanted. So no big hassle about moving data or anything. So it just uses our advanced technology to create a risk score about a transaction, deliver certainty about that, whether it's identity and suitability, as in this case, as we demonstrated at the FCA, and similar to the one that we're doing with 6 banks in Switzerland, overseen by FINMA and a Big Four consultancy there. So it's a simple process, and using this technology, there's no real excuse for not making a big impact on collaborating, because usually there's a good idea, but it gets stopped by data having to be pooled or moved from an organization, and we get around that. Next slide, please. Next slide, if you may, Alison. Thank you. Thank you so much. So here's a simple example. If we just take the top part just for today in APP fraud, Ashley Scott, who was one of the people in the FCA Digital Sandbox, large pool of data, she thought she was paying British Telecom. The account number and BIC were the same, but the address and the name and everything else were different. She was actually paying this fraudster, Russell Hunter. And when we also looked at the suitability of both participants here, it gave back extra alerts to both banks to say that further investigation was needed because there were SARs filed on Russell Hunter in the last year. There was a high volume of transaction and there had been a hold placed on his account. And the intelligent aspect of this was we were able to take Russell Hunter then and look at what transactions were associated with that account at other banks, and then we were able to detect additional people who were part of Russell Hunter's fraud and criminal group moving money around in the UK. So this is a simple example of how we can prevent financial crime. Last slide, if you may, please. So banks can choose who they collaborate with. It's a simple SDK deployed. We run the system, but we never see or view any of the data. We just deliver the risk score and then enable the banks to talk to each other after risk has been qualified and confirmed. We can run an analytics hub, which shows the volume of transactions. And then there may be a need for a qualified, confirmed fraud database after you've taken a suspicion and confirmed it. But for us, we allow for great insights to be gained without that pooling of data. And that's the concept. And that's using advanced technology like zero knowledge proof and secure multi-party computation that you hear about in applications like blockchain and central bank digital currencies and that, but it's using it in a practical way with no barriers to implementation at banks that can be done quickly, and we can start preventing some horrendous funding of financial crimes straight away. So look forward to expanding this throughout Asia Pac.
Great. Thank you very much, David. And we do have some time for Q&A now. I think either I can ask some of the panel to expand on some of the answers that are coming through in the chat box, if that's helpful. If there are no other questions coming through, we have one here. So I don't know whether you can see that, David, and you want to comment on your competitors.
So this is unique in that it uses. I'm not familiar with Quantexa. I'm sorry, Lorraine, but the scenario with this is that it can be used in any industry. We're doing a lot in insurance as well, because insurers want to compare information without actually moving data, which is really interesting. And it's an easy deploy. But maybe I might follow up with you, Lorraine, on that one. And the next question from Shireen. It's more for any organizations who want to take a stance against and prevent financial crime amongst themselves. It's great if a regulator oversees it, as we have happening in Switzerland, because that really pushes it. But this allows a network of banks to work together to stop financial crime. And the second part of your question is, if there's collaborating banks, both of them have to deploy the SDK and talk to each other and agree the questions that they'll ask each other and the risk score. So that's for sure. It requires those two. But we are working with some very large, some of the biggest banks in the world on just their communication with each other in different jurisdictions. So my Commonwealth account that I opened in '99 when I was working on the stormwater tunnels in Sydney, I'm a different person than I was in '99. I live in a different place. So if Commonwealth, but my account is still open, and if I was to move money into that Commonwealth account now, they might want to do some checks on me with perhaps the Irish bank, but they have no really good way of working in that manner. So yeah, it's a good use case, and thanks for the questions.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So lots of questions coming through for David, but to be fair to the others, is there anything else for? I think particularly for DX Compliance and Fenergo, maybe they didn't get to take questions at the start. And I have one for Fenergo around offboarding. Just interested in how your platform enables offboarding of clients and makes that easier for offboarding of the bank's clients, but makes that easier for the banks.
Yeah, so good question, Nick. So in the same way of the onboarding, it's around automating that process, following a codified rules based on the regulations and the jurisdictions that we're in. So as I said, Fenergo's solution is built by our community. So they come to us and they tell us what they want based on the regulations. We then build that into our product at our cost and mutualize that across the group. So in the case of offboarding, we'll follow the whatever regulation and jurisdiction we're in. We'll follow whatever the regulatory requirements are. We'll follow that process, and then we'll orchestrate the actual process in the same way. So that can either be done in person in a branch, it can be done remotely online, it can be done through a mobile app, and you can orchestrate and manage that process step by step. And of course, it's all centralized in one place. So it might be done in all three places. As an example, somebody might come into a branch and or a documentation may be sent out from a branch and then completed at a call center and then finished up online. And then that information is closed and the case management keeps that within the system.
Okay, thank you. And I'm trying to see any more questions coming through, but for DX compliance, I saw you commenting on the AI and machine learning and how you're building that into your product roadmap. Maybe in the chat, maybe you could just give us a minute or two on that for the audience who hasn't seen it.
Yeah, so because we primarily focus on post KYC AML compliance, which is ongoing, there's multiple layers. So first part is the very highly dynamic transaction monitoring side, but it's a very self-service. The second level is the combining financial and non-financial data to look at the entire customer base of your organization to see if there's any related information that you really see there are patterns within the organization. So if there are shared details, shared addresses, shared phone numbers to look at what individual KYC is missed. The third level is around in terms of specific anti-money laundering patterns. For example, if multiple transactions are moving through your system where some of your customers have been part of money muling, as an example. So all these patterns are shown up visually to you as a organization, and then that becomes a case, and then you can manage in terms of that you agree or disagree because every business is unique. The fourth level we're doing beta phase right now is more like similar customers, which is really giving a feedback-driven scenario where the end user can agree or disagree with the result set, and then what if they agree with the similar customer matching, it actually goes back to the learning. If it's not, it drops out of the learning. So in like weeks and months, depending on the quality of the data, you have a very specific similar customer behavior within your organization. So it's kind of doing in 4 levels because we're doing ongoing compliance.
Thank you. And so we get to 528, and it's been 528 in Sydney. It's been a whirlwind tour of the RegTech universe. So I'm going to hand over to Alison to wrap up, I think.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was really a great session, and thank you to our RegTechs for taking the time to show us through their world-leading solutions, and thank you to our valued friends at EY for doing such a great job with the moderation and setting the scene also for us at the beginning and giving us an update of what the current landscape looks like and what the future could look like too. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for registering and attending. As I said, this will be has been recorded, so it will go up on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. On your screen now is just some of our events that are coming up, with our main programs of RegTech Open for Business and our additional RegTechEdgeNoBorders that are coming on. We've also got a RegTech 101. And at the end of the year, we are, fingers crossed and COVID permitting, going to have a physical event in Sydney for our RegTech Awards, which we are very excited about. If you want to be part of our community, this is who we are. You can see from this map the 180 odd members that we have now, and we need to start using a different map that has a bigger screen to it or more size, because we're running out of space, as you can see here, so that's a good problem to have. And if you're not an RTA member, you can join online, or you can reach out to us and have a conversation with us. We'd love you to be part of the community. So again, thank you. If you want to stay on for a couple more minutes, if there's any questions that we didn't get to, feel free to stay on, or you're welcome to reach out to myself or any of the presenters via LinkedIn, or if you want details, please feel free to contact me and I will organise that for you. But for now, I'll bring the formal closure to the formal proceedings, and we hope to see you online again soon. Thank you.